All right, so part two, we're going to talk about some other things that are helpful for when you're dealing with safety. And one thing is a CAS number. And a CAS number is a unique number that is like a chemical social security number. You'll see as we get through this year that there's a lot of different names that we can give to one chemical. NaCl, for example, is known as salt. It's also known as sodium chloride. So if you're going to make a regulation about it, it's difficult to make sure you've covered every possible name. So what the chemical community has done is assign a CAS number, so like a social security number, to every formula that's out there. Any chemical compound that's out there can have its unique number. And that way, if it's called one thing in one country and another thing in another country, you both know if you're talking about the same thing because of the CAS number. So it helps eliminate a lot of naming issues. And if you're trying to regulate something, like if you want something to be not allowed on airplanes and someone tries to sneak it on by giving it a different name, by requiring a CAS number, you will eliminate any confusion. So that's the whole point of that. And then we have these things called safety data sheets. They're need to be available for chemicals that you have on a premise. And now with Google, you can actually Google everything, which is good. So you can find a safety data sheet faster through Google than you could if you filed one away. But in the old days before Google, we used to have a big notebook full of these if you had it in the lab or something. And these safety data sheets will show the pictograms like we were talking about. So this chemical here, acetone, is flammable, and other hazards. And the other hazard is eye damage. And yeah, so these are helpful to tell you sort of what the dangers are of these chemicals. Tells you first aid measures, which is good. So if you get exposed, this one, you need to call the poison center if you get some inside of you. The NFPA diamonds that I just talked about in the first video is here, but son of a gun, they didn't put it as a diamond after I told you how important it is to understand it. They put it in a different format. They have the H, F, and R for health, flammability, and reactivity. So they're not in diamond form. And then look, the CAS number that we talked about will always sort of be on this, as will the formula always be on these. So it's helpful information for that. And you're going to fool around with some of these and look through them and be able to get some information off of them in a class. So other things that are nice to know if you're reading through these, if you really are faced with chemicals, let's say you're in charge of a warehouse when you get older, or you're running a store that has these type of things in them, or any kind of building where these might be there, and you're trying to figure out how dangerous is this. If you really start to read these carefully, you'll see that there's a few things you're going to want to notice. So in the physical and chemical property area, if it has a low boiling point, so low numbers for boiling or high vapor pressure, that means it can get in the air pretty quickly, right? If you just leave the bottle open, it can come up and fill a room up with vapor. And so that's one thing to worry about, because for the most part, chemicals, if they're in their bottle and they're over there and you're over here, you're safe. But if it's possible that it could be leaking out of the bottle because of its vapor, and it can still affect you, get into your lungs and whatnot, then that's something to worry about. So that's helpful to know if it's low boiling. And the other thing that's helpful to know, if you look here, this product contains a component that has been reported to be possibly carcinogenic, right? People are going to try to cover themselves from lawsuits, basically, and make sure that they don't say anything for certain. And because of this, a lot of these get very complicated. And so there's this thing called LD50, which does help you cut through the legalese and really tell me where I stand. So let me show you an example of this. Here I have a safety data sheet. And if we look through some of the information here, it's not flammable. That's good to know. Handling and storage. Keep this locked up. Do not breathe the dust, right? Wear protective clothing. All right. If you feel unwell, so this is starting to sound a little scary. Personal protection, safety glasses, lab coat, dust respirator. You need to wear one of those like Darth Vader masks if you're using this stuff. It's odorless, it's tasteless. That's its color is amber or gray, and not a lot of applicable. It's insoluble in water. Stability, it's pretty stable. That's good, so you don't have to worry about it. Just toxicology, its inhalation and ingestion is a problem. There is no LD50, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And so let's get up higher. This is getting boring down here. Slightly hazardous in case of skin contact or eye contact or ingestion. Carcinogenic, so cancer-causing effects. It's classified as a proven human carcinogen by this agency, the IARC. This agency, the ACGIH, says it's suspected to be a cancer-causing thing. So this is sounding pretty scary. But it turns out, look what we're talking about. We're talking about sea sand. And that, as we know, as we've all been to the beach, is not that scary. All right. Where's the one where it says skin contact? Wash with soap and water. Cover irritated skin with emollient, right? This sounds awful, what you're dealing with. But we go to the beach and it's on our skin all the time, right? It's because of this legalese stuff that people have to cover themselves. And because of that, sea sand sounds pretty scary when it's on the SDS. So because of this, we're going to talk about something called an LD50. And that'll be my next slide, actually.